You became strong for everyone so gradually that it did not even feel like a decision at first. It felt like life. It felt like being the one who remembered Mom's cardiologist appointment, the one who checked whether Dad had taken his medication, the one who answered the phone when a grown son called after another rough night, the one who sent the birthday card, brought the casserole to the church fellowship hall, stayed late after service to pray with somebody else, then drove home in silence with your own heart still aching. People look at you and see dependable, faithful, steady. They see someone who keeps showing up. They see someone who can carry a lot. But God sees the part nobody claps for. He sees the way you sit in your car for an extra minute in the church parking lot before going inside because you need to pull yourself together. He sees the way you smile in the grocery store, wave at people you know, and still feel tired in a place sleep cannot touch. And this message is for that version of you, chosen one. The one who has poured into everyone else for so long that you barely remember what it feels like to receive. God is not condemning you for being worn down. He is not disappointed that you feel thin, stretched, and a little lost inside your own strength. He is calling you back, not into selfishness, but into healing. So before we go any further, take a breath and let this reach you personally. If this message already feels like it is telling your story, leave a comment saying, "God is healing me too." And stay with this word all the way to the end, because what heaven is saying to you today may be the very thing that helps you stop surviving and start healing. You learned to survive by becoming everybody's safe place. And for many people in this season of life, that did not begin in comfort. It began in necessity. Maybe you were the oldest child who learned early how to read the room and keep the peace. Maybe you were the spouse who stayed calm during layoffs, medical scares, and months when the checking account was tighter than anyone wanted to admit. Maybe you were the church woman everyone trusted, the man in the family who never let his voice shake, the mother who could carry groceries, bad news, and other people's emotions all in the same afternoon. Somewhere along the line, being available became being valuable. Being needed became being loved. And because life in America has a way of praising productivity, reliability, and sacrifice, you may have spent decades being rewarded for the very thing that was quietly draining you. People thanked you for stepping up. Family counted on you. The church leaned on you. Your neighborhood knew you as the one who always checked in, always remembered, always gave. But strength became more than your role. It became your hiding place. Because as long as someone else needed you, you did not have to sit too long with what hurt inside you. As long as there was another errand, another call to return, another prayer request, another person to help after Sunday service, you could postpone your own ache for one more day. And that is why so many chosen ones in this age range feel strangely disoriented when the room gets quiet. When there is no emergency to manage, no family member to comfort, no one asking for help, they are left face to face with a question that feels bigger than it should. Who am I when I am not rescuing somebody? That question unsettles people because it exposes how deeply their identity got wrapped around usefulness. You may have become the one who sat for hours in a hospital waiting room with a brother, then picked up grandkids from school, then dropped off something at church for the Wednesday night meal, then came home and stood in the kitchen staring at the sink, feeling a sadness you did not even have language for. You may have answered late-night texts from adult children who still lean on you emotionally, financially, spiritually, then whispered, "I'm okay," when someone asked how you were doing. You may have become so fluent in helping that you forgot how to be held. And then, because caring for others is holy work, because compassion matters, because Scripture honors service and generosity and bearing one another's burdens, you may not have realized that even something beautiful can become a place to hide. Serving others is good. Loving people is right. Being the hands and feet of Christ in ordinary life is sacred. But when holy work becomes a way to avoid your own wounds, it stops being pure overflow and starts becoming quiet self-abandonment, dressed up as faithfulness. That is a hard truth for a lot of good people to hear, especially people who have built their lives around church, family, and duty.
Yet God sees the difference between a life poured out from wholeness and a life poured out because you do not know what else to do with your own pain. He sees when you sign up for one more ministry need, not because you are refreshed and ready, but because staying busy keeps you from feeling lonely. He sees when you keep focusing on a daughter's marriage, a son's addiction, a grandchild's struggles in school, a sibling's finances, a friend's diagnosis. Because if you stop managing their pain, your own grief might finally catch up with you. He sees when your body is tired, your back hurts, your mind is cloudy, your spirit feels flat. And you still say yes, because no has become unfamiliar in your mouth. In American church culture, especially for people who came up in generations that prized commitment, endurance, and service, it is very easy to confuse being constantly available with being spiritually healthy. It is easy to assume that because you are still showing up, still volunteering, still cooking, still giving, still praying for everybody else, you must be fine. But constant sacrifice is not always the same thing as healing. Sometimes it is just pain with good manners. Sometimes it is grief wearing church clothes. Sometimes it is loneliness carrying a casserole dish. And the mercy of God is that He does not shame you for that. He does not expose this to embarrass you. He exposes it because He loves you too much to let you disappear inside your own usefulness. That is why the next thing heaven wants you to understand is so important. God is not asking you to stop loving people. He is asking you to stop abandoning yourself. For a chosen one, especially one who has spent years trying to be good, faithful, and dependable, this can sound almost wrong at first. You may hear the language of boundaries, rest, honesty, or healing, and immediately feel guilty. You may think, but what about my family? What about my responsibilities? What about serving the Lord? Yet God is not calling you into selfishness. He is calling you into stewardship. He is reminding you that the soul He gave you matters too. The body you live in matters too. The mind that has carried so much strain matters too. The heart you keep handing out in pieces matters too. Healing is not a betrayal of your calling. Healing protects your calling from becoming a slow form of self-erasure. And this is where the message gets deeply practical, because healing often begins with choices that look very ordinary from the outside. It may mean saying no to one more unpaid obligation that your body does not have the strength for. It may mean turning your phone off for an hour without apologizing to the world. It may mean finally scheduling your own doctor appointment after months of putting it off while everybody else got your attention first. It may mean sitting with a Christian counselor. It may mean telling a trusted pastor, small group leader, or longtime friend, "I need prayer, and to be honest, I'm not doing well." It may mean letting another capable person at church take a turn, instead of assuming it all falls on you. It may mean refusing to rush in and fix the repeated chaos of grown children who need wisdom more than rescue. These choices can feel unnatural at first, especially when your whole emotional wiring has been trained to keep everybody else comfortable. But God is not honored by your constant depletion. He is not glorified by a life where you disappear while everyone else is sustained by your exhaustion. He wants truth in the inward parts. He wants your yes to come from peace, not panic. He wants your service
to come from love, not fear. He wants you to understand that protecting your soul is not weakness, it is wisdom. And that matters because the exhaustion you feel is not just physical, it is soul deep.
This is not the kind of tired a good night's sleep fixes. This is not just a busy week or a rough month. This is the weariness that settles in after years of being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who kept swallowing disappointment because there was no time to fall apart. It is the fatigue of being present at everyone else's emergencies while quietly carrying heartbreak nobody fully saw. It is the numbness of living in a constant state of emotional output. It is the heaviness of years spent saying, "I'm fine," because telling the truth felt too complicated, too inconvenient, or too dangerous. This kind of exhaustion shows up in familiar American life moments that almost nobody talks about honestly. It shows up when you stand at the kitchen sink, staring out the window at the backyard, dish towel in your hand, and feel yourself go blank for a moment, because you are so used to functioning that you do not even know how tired you are until the house is quiet. It shows up when you sit in the church parking lot on Sunday morning, listening to the last few minutes of a worship song on the radio, asking God to help you get through one more service with a smile on your face. It shows up at 3 a.m. when the house is dark, the clock seems louder than usual, and your mind is replaying everybody else's needs, everybody else's problems, everybody else's future, while your own heart feels like it is lying in the room unanswered. It shows up walking down the grocery aisle under fluorescent lights, seeing people you know, making small talk, putting coffee creamer and paper towels in the cart, while inside you feel strangely far away from yourself. This is the quiet erosion many people between 45 and 65 understand, but rarely describe. They do not always have dramatic breakdowns. They keep going. They make dinner. They attend Bible study. They pick up prescriptions. They help with grandkids. They go to work, or they navigate retirement worries, or they manage houses that still need attention and families that still need prayers. They keep moving, and because they keep moving, people assume they are fine. But God sees hidden exhaustion. He sees the person who is outwardly functioning and inwardly thinning. He sees the emotional bruising that never got named. He sees the tears that come in strange places, the short temper that is really pain, the numbness that is really overload, the silence that is really sorrow with no room to breathe. And sometimes, because He is merciful, He allows the overwhelm to become impossible to ignore. That is not punishment. That is exposure with purpose. The emotional heaviness you feel right now may not be a sign that you are failing spiritually. It may be the moment buried pain is finally coming into the light. God may be allowing the pressure to reveal what has been hiding underneath your constant caregiving for years. Grief that never got processed because there were too many people to take care of after the funeral. Betrayal you minimized because life had to keep moving. Resentment from carrying more than your share and calling it love. Fear of disappointing people that became so normal you mistook it for kindness. An identity so wrapped up in usefulness that being still now feels frightening. The ache of being surrounded by people who need you and still feeling unseen in your own pain. This is where the chosen one often misreads their own life. They think, why am I suddenly this emotional? Why am I this tired? Why does everything feel heavier now? But many times, the answer is not that you are becoming weaker. It is that what was buried is no longer staying buried. Maybe you lost a parent and never slowed down long enough to grieve because paperwork had to be handled, meals had to be made, family had to be held together, and church people needed updates. Maybe you went through divorce and stayed in go mode because that was the only way to survive. And now, years later, the loneliness you outran is finally catching up.
Maybe retirement has brought financial strain, and the pressure of stretching every dollar while still trying to help family has exposed how much fear you have been carrying. Maybe one troubled family member has taken so much emotional space that you no longer know where their life ends and yours begins. Maybe your adult children are struggling, and you have become an expert at sounding calm while privately feeling like your heart is always bracing for the next phone call. In all of this, God is not exposing your wounds to humiliate you. He is exposing them to heal you. He is not pulling back the curtain to shame the helper. He is doing it to rescue the human being underneath the helper, the soul underneath the role, the heart underneath the responsibilities.
And that is why this moment, uncomfortable as it may feel, is holy. Because the place where your strength no longer seems to work the way it used to may be the very place where deeper healing finally begins. And because deeper healing often begins in places that do not look dramatic at all, you may find that God starts restoring you in rooms and moments so ordinary that at first you almost miss how sacred they are. It may begin at the kitchen table before sunrise, when the house is still quiet, the coffee is hot in your hands, and for once, you are not thinking about who needs a ride, who needs money, who needs advice, or who still has not texted back. It may begin in that soft blue light of early morning, with your Bible open, but your eyes too tired to read much, when the most honest prayer you can manage is not polished or impressive, but simply, "Lord, I am tired. Help me." That kind of prayer may feel small to you, but heaven does not measure healing by drama. Heaven measures it by truth. It may begin sitting in a recliner with the television on and the sound low, barely noticing what is playing because your heart is finally catching up to emotions you have pushed aside for years. It may begin while folding laundry, pairing socks, smoothing out towels, doing the kind of chore you have done 10,000 times, and suddenly tears rise for no obvious reason except that your soul has decided it cannot stay numb forever. It may begin on the drive home from church, after you walked in with your usual brave face, shook hands in the lobby, asked everybody else how they were doing, sat through worship with your shoulders tight, and then one lyric slipped past your defenses and touched something bruised in you that had not been touched in a long time. Maybe it was one line about rest or mercy or the faithfulness of God, and it undid you right there behind the wheel at a red light with your purse on the passenger seat and the church bulletin still beside it. Maybe healing begins in a counselor's office, where, for the first time in years, somebody asks you a question and actually waits for the real answer. Maybe it begins after Bible study, when a friend lingers in the fellowship hall, notices something in your face and says quietly, "How are you really doing?" And instead of giving the automatic answer, instead of smiling and saying, "I'm fine, just busy," you finally tell the truth. Not the whole story all at once, not every wound and every fear, but enough truth to let light in. That is often how healing begins, chosen one. Not with a thunderclap, not with instant transformation, not with one emotional altar moment that erases years of strain. It begins in ordinary places because God knows that ordinary life is where your pain has been living. Your pain has been living in daily routines, in grocery store aisles, in prescription pickups, in church pews, in long evenings, in difficult family phone calls, in the tired silence after dinner, in the way you keep functioning while something inside you keeps asking to be noticed. So it makes sense that healing would come there too. It comes in a walk around the neighborhood when the air is cool and your thoughts finally settle enough for you to realize how long you have been carrying more than one person was meant to carry. It comes when you sit on the side of the bed and decide not to rush past your own sadness. It comes when you rest
without writing a defense for it in your head. It comes when you let a trusted friend bring you a meal instead of insisting, like always, that you are okay. It comes when you admit that the exhaustion is real, that the resentment is real, that the loneliness is real, that the fear is real, and that pretending otherwise has not made any of it disappear. This is why so many chosen ones misunderstand what healing looks like. They are waiting for a feeling. They are waiting for a breakthrough moment, so obvious that they can point to it and say, "There, that was the instant everything changed." But many times, healing is quieter than that, holier than that, slower than that. It is deeply personal and often hidden. It may look like going to bed earlier because your body has been carrying stress like a second job. It may look like not answering every text right away. It may look like accepting that you need support. It may look like sitting in your car in the driveway for a few extra minutes, not because you are avoiding life, but because you are learning to check in with your own heart before rushing into the next demand. It may look like taking a morning off and feeling guilty at first, then realizing halfway through that the world did not collapse because you rested. And that leads into a truth many people need but resist, because once healing begins in ordinary places, God will often use boundaries as part of your deliverance. This is where things get uncomfortable for people who have spent decades being dependable, especially if you were raised to believe that good people always say yes, that godly people always make room, that love means absorbing whatever comes your way without protest. But not every demand is a calling. Not every crisis is yours to carry. Not every emergency belongs in your nervous system. And one of the ways God heals his people is by showing them what they are no longer required to hold. For some chosen ones, that begins with something as simple as not answering every phone call the second it comes in. It means seeing a family member's name on the screen, feeling the familiar jolt of obligation, and pausing long enough to ask, "Do I actually have the capacity for this conversation right now?" It means realizing that access to you is not the same thing as ownership of you. It means understanding that you can call back later. You can pray first. You can wait until your spirit is steady. You can stop training people to treat your availability like an emergency room that never closes. For others, boundaries may mean refusing to finance repeated irresponsibility. That is especially painful when it involves adult children, grandchildren, siblings, or other relatives you love deeply. You want to help. You do not want to watch someone struggle. You do not want to be the reason they are disappointed. But there is a difference between support and enabling, between mercy and rescuing someone from lessons they need to learn. A chosen one who has spent years over-functioning can feel almost physically guilty when they stop fixing what other grown people keep breaking. Yet guilt is not always conviction. Sometimes it is just the discomfort of changing old patterns. Boundaries may also mean stepping back from toxic family drama that has become so normal you barely recognize how draining it is. Maybe every holiday gathering turns into the same cycle of tension, passive aggression, and emotional cleanup, and everybody expects you to smooth it over because you always have. Maybe one relative calls only to dump negativity into your day and then disappears until the next problem. Maybe somebody in your circle has learned that if they create enough chaos, you will step in to stabilize it. God may be teaching you that peace in your own home is not selfish. It is stewardship. Protecting what enters your spirit is not cruelty. It is wisdom. And this applies to church life too, because even service in the house of God can become self-neglect if it is driven by pressure instead of calling. Some people have been so faithful for so long that the church assumes they will always volunteer, always cook, always organize, always show up early, always stay late, always pray with everyone, always be the strong one. But God never intended your service to consume the soul He is also trying to heal. It is possible to love the church and still need rest. It is possible to be committed and still say, "Not this season." It is possible to serve Jesus and also admit, "I cannot keep doing this at the cost of my own peace." That is not rebellion. That is maturity. That is a chosen one, learning that holiness does not mean carrying what God did not assign. The hard part, of course, is that once you begin living this way, the people around you may not understand the new you at first.
In fact, some of them may resist it, not because you are doing something wrong, but because the old version of you made their lives easier. Family members who were comfortable with your over-giving may become confused when you stop stepping in so fast. An adult child who is used to you over-functioning may sound offended when you no longer solve every problem, send every rescue payment, or rearrange your whole week around their poor planning. Relatives who counted on you to be the peacemaker at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday dinner, every funeral, every crisis, may act as if you are suddenly cold, when all you are really doing is refusing to bleed in silence to keep everyone else comfortable. Friends who only seem to call when they need something may pull away when they realize you are not as instantly available as before. Church people who assumed you would always say yes may look surprised, maybe even disappointed when you politely say no or step back for a while. And if you are not prepared for that tension, you may mistake their discomfort for proof that you are making the wrong choice. But growth often feels lonely before it feels peaceful. Obedience often feels awkward before it feels strong. The chosen one who begins to heal will usually pass through a season where they are no longer who they were, but not yet fully comfortable as who they are becoming. That in-between place can feel tender. It can feel like losing approval you did not realize you depended on. It can feel like standing in the kitchen after a hard phone call, heart racing, wondering if you were too harsh, when all you really did was tell the truth for once. It can feel like driving home from church after declining another responsibility and hearing old thoughts rise up. Thoughts that say you are letting people down, you are not loving enough, you are becoming selfish. But this is where discernment matters. Being misunderstood is sometimes part of obedience. Jesus did not call you to be admired for over-sacrifice. He called you to be faithful. And faithfulness is not measured by how many people can access you without limits. It is measured by whether your life is aligned with truth. Some people will celebrate the healthier version of you. They will notice more calm in your voice, more steadiness in your spirit, more honesty in your presence. They will honor your boundaries because they love you, not just what you do for them. But others may not celebrate right away, especially if the old you benefited them. Let them have their feelings. Let them adjust. Let them misunderstand for a while if they must. You are not responsible for making your healing convenient for everyone else. And that brings you to one of the most beautiful changes of all. Because when you start healing, you will not love people less, you will love them differently. This is the redemptive shift the chosen one often fears, but deeply needs. Somewhere inside, you may worry that if you stop carrying everything, you will become hard. If you set boundaries, you will become distant. If you stop panicking over everybody, you will become uncaring. But healing does not make love smaller. It makes love cleaner. It makes love wiser. It makes love breathe again. Unhealed love is often frantic. It rushes in, overpromises, absorbs too much, confuses control with care, and feels responsible for outcomes that belong to God and other grown people. Healed love is steadier. It listens without drowning. It helps without taking over. It shows compassion without surrendering peace. It can sit with someone's pain without making that pain its new identity. It can pray without panicking. That is a major transformation for the chosen one who has lived for years in a state of constant emotional alertness. Imagine what it looks like to pray for your family without feeling like you have to carry their future in your chest every hour of the day. Imagine calling your son or daughter and speaking with warmth, but not taking ownership of choices they must make themselves. Imagine helping someone because God led you to, not because guilt cornered you into it. Imagine listening to a friend's struggle without absorbing every ounce of it into your own already weary soul. Imagine going back to church, not as a performer of strength, not as the one with the fixed smile and the automatic volunteer reflex, but as a real person who can worship sincerely, receive honestly, and sit in the presence of God without pretending. Imagine rediscovering joy in small things because your nervous system is no longer bracing all the time. A quiet dinner at home, a Saturday morning without rushing, coffee on the porch, laughter with a grandchild that does not feel interrupted by worry, a walk through the neighborhood when the trees are moving and your mind is not racing, a hymn on the radio that ministers to you instead of merely passing through the background. This is what happens when love is no longer powered by exhaustion and fear. It becomes powered by peace and truth. You still care deeply. You may care more deeply than ever, but you are no longer bleeding for everyone who asks. You are no longer confusing your depletion with devotion. You are no longer mistaking self-erasure for holiness. And that is why, at the center of all of this, God is calling you back to the part of you that got left behind. Not the selfish part, not the careless part, not some colder, detached version of yourself. He is calling you back to the part of your heart that has gone neglected, overworked, silenced, and pushed aside while you cared for everyone else. He is not speaking this word to rebuke you for being loving. He is speaking it to rescue you from disappearing inside that love. He sees the years you kept showing up. He sees the meals made, the bills paid, the hospital visits, the church services, the hard conversations, the rides given, the prayers whispered in the dark, the strength you offered, while privately running on fumes. None of that was unseen. None of it was wasted. But somewhere along the way, in the middle of all that responsibility, you left parts of yourself waiting in the background, hoping for the same tenderness you gave so freely to others. And now, in His mercy, God is turning toward those hidden places in you and saying, come back to honesty, come back to rest, come back to truth, come back to being a whole person, not just a useful one. This healing may not happen all at once. It may come slowly, prayer by prayer, boundary by boundary, honest conversation by honest conversation. It may come through ordinary mornings, difficult decisions, small acts of courage, and the steady kindness of God meeting you in real life. But it is coming. The same God who watched you care for everybody else is now inviting you to receive care too. You are not losing your purpose. You are being restored to it. And this time, it will not come from depletion. It will come from wholeness.